about a multi-decade commitment. That's really what this is about. It's about a multi-decade commitment to connect our personal developmental process with our social developmental process, with our societal and our systems developmental and transformational process. So that as we grow and as our social network comes together at a national and planetary scale, that so too does the tangible reality that we inhabit also transform. And that these three things kind of transform together. We co-arise our own personal empowerment, our social connections, and our societal, systemic, and governmental transformations. And OneNation is a container and space for that to occur. To give a little bit of a background, I grew up in the Mormon faith, and that shapes a person in a particular way, lots of different ways. And I was definitely connected to this idea of heaven on earth. From the Mormon perspective, I was sure that one of these days, it was a surprise, this guy was going to come out of heaven and say, hey, I'm here, and then everything was going to be okay. And as I went through my early 20s, I let go of that and started to wonder, like, what if that person that I thought was going to come out of heaven is you and me? What if we're it? You know, what if we're the best that the cosmos is sending here to planet Earth? And it's that energy of love and of leadership, that godliness that lives within us, that's really the thing that catalyzes this new era for humanity. And I started seeing these myths of heaven on earth in a more kind of pragmatic way. Okay, great. Well, let's create that world. Let's not wait for anybody to come and save us. And I pointed to what I thought was the biggest problem on the planet, which is extreme poverty and the bottom billions. And so I got involved living in Africa, starting an international nonprofit, and working with communities and tribes to help to improve quality of life, basic sanitation, food, water quality, feminine empowerment, feminine hygiene, really basic stuff. And I was really connected to that, and I felt like that was the place that I could be of most service to humanity, to this world, to creating this better world. And after several years of being involved in that work and starting to better understand the geopolitical drivers of this world, I had this massive aha of realizing, oh, holy smokes, extreme poverty isn't just the people that haven't developed yet. Like if they catch up to the developed world, then we're all going to be good. But there was actually deeper systemic drivers that were creating this type of poverty, this type of suffering, this type of inequality. And lo and behold, our country is actually playing a major role in the geopolitical drivers that were making poverty exacerbated and so many other issues exacerbated. And I grew up in a Christian household and in a Republican household, and one of the Republican ideals is American exceptionalism. So I was certain that America was definitely the best thing that's ever happened to the world, for sure. And so all these beliefs were starting to be deeply challenged and confronted. And I ultimately came to this realization that, and I can see this myriad of do-gooders, thousands and millions of them just hacking at the leaves of this issue, but there was a never-ending amount of leaves, there was a never-ending amount of suffering to attend to if you're dealing at that level. And so I made a commitment in my kind of early, mid-20s, not even knowing what it would look like, that I was going to devote my life to systemic transformation, to actually change the system, to work at the roots of the issue that would create a new set of dynamics so that rather than just tremendous amount of suffering being the thing that emerges from our geopolitical system, actually something that resembled closer to this idea of heaven on earth, which isn't a world paved with golden roads. It's a world where people are connected to their own experience of freedom, connected to making choices, making very meaningful choices on a daily basis. and having the wherewithal in relation to themselves, and having the capacity and resources to be able to make choices and to live a life based on their own agency. And for me, that's as far as we could go for my sake of Kevin and I through that. And I believe that this type of transformation was possible. And I'll kind of fast forward 10 years of that journey. Was fortunate enough to come into a relationship with a lot of very, very intelligent people who have done a lot of thinking about it. And where that story goes is there's nothing short of a renaissance of civic engagement that will do the trick. What that means to me is we can't just tinker with a system. We can't just create new technology. We can't just reinvent how we do business and economics. We can't just allocate resources a different way. None of these things are sufficiently impactful to create the depth of the transformation. And so the conclusion that I came to is any solutions that were at that level, I knew were not adequate. But this renaissance of civic engagement is this conversation that, and it kind of comes back to what you were pointing to, that everybody needs to start caring about the world that they're co-stewarding. And that care has to be deep, has to be authentic, and they have to have the capacities to do something about that deep, authentic care. So it's that full kind of arrival where everybody finds their own expression of leadership in service to this better world. So in a sense, it really has to be this decentralized surge of civic engagement. And when I talk about the word politics, sometimes I like to ask people, like, okay, when I say the word politics, what sound comes to mind, right? You get a lot of groans, because what's happened is a lot of people have looked at the government and seen manipulation, seen dishonesty, seen hypocrisy, seen various parties vying for power, and have just taken all of that, what they see in government, and have used that as the definition of politics. So politics has become this dirty word full of these like yucky connotations. But if you look at politics, if you look at the word, if you go to the etymology, if you go back to Greek, then politics comes from the word polis. And polis is rooted into city, or my city. So politics isn't just kind of backbiting, backstabbing, vying for power. Politics, with a capital P, the root of that, the people that invented our language, what they meant when they were bringing that forward was it's a love for the place that you call home. It's a love for your city. It's a love for your nation. It's a love for your planet. It's a love for your world. And it's a love and a care for your family and your children that are going to inherit that place, as well as the people that you share that world with, as well as the living environment that we share that world with. It's a love so much that you're willing to get off of your farm or off of your orchard in order to step up to play some role in helping to steward the place, in helping to make wise decisions, in helping to steward the commons well. So that's the politics that's a flame that burns in my heart. And when I talk about this renaissance of civic engagement, it's that we each find what politics means to us. We find what it means, what it looks like for me to care so much about this world that I'm exhibiting my leadership into it. That's politics. Government is one expression of politics, but politics is a deeper concept. It's a more noble concept. It's a more human concept. And then I look at the word civics. And civics also is connected to the idea of city. but it goes deeper, and it goes to townsmen, or the people that I share this town with. So again, it's kind of rooted into this deeper concept. Right? We talk about civics just being, oh yeah, how we deal with social issues or governmental issues, but it's this feeling of sharing our world. And the deepest Latin origin of the word references a crown put on somebody's head for saving your brother's life in battle. Kind of like the original Purple Heart. That was civics. Right? It was like, well, I'm going to risk my life to be able to care for another. So again, when I talk about this renaissance of civic engagement, I'm not saying we all get involved with government. Okay, that's not the heart of what I'm saying. I'm not saying that if we all just kind of get more involved with the city council, then no, it's that we allow this deep energy of stewardship and of connection to our fellow man and our fellow woman to emerge within us. And then that informs how we move in the world. And so what I'd like to talk about tonight are kind of some of the core principles of what I see this renaissance of civic engagement entailing. And I hope that these are meaningful to you because they've been kind of shaping up over time. And they've been crystallizing. And they've been very meaningful to me as I've received these insights and transformed how I choose to live because of them. One of the core insights around what I see this renaissance of civic engagement entails comes back to inheritance. It comes to realizing the profundity of inheritance and consciously relating to what we are the inheritors of. Because we are the inheritors. What are we inheriting? Well, if your family has some wealth, you might inherit some wealth from your family lineage. But that's kind of the obvious conversation, right? We can go a little bit deeper than that. We're inheriting our natural world. Right? So we are the inheritors of this natural world that we live in. Right? What does that mean? What does that mean to be an inheritor of that? How do we show up for that? We are inheritors of all of these sectors, right? We are the inheritors of the media sector and of the energy sector. We are the inheritors of the technology sectors. It's ours. We are the people that steward that, the people that hold that power aren't going to be there forever. And we, as a rising generation, regardless of our age range in this room, we are inheriting that which those who have created before us will inevitably leave behind. What does that mean? So that every industry that exists, we are the inheritors of it. And how do we choose to be in relation to that? I heard, I was at Wisdom 2.0 in 2008, and I forgot his name, but one of the Fords, who was the great-grandson of Henry Ford, was speaking, and he was the CEO of a Ford Motor Company. And up until that moment in time, I was sure that Ford must be run by these evil people because it's like planned obsolescence and it's like supporting the oil industry and it's like driving consumerism and all the things, right? And I hear this guy speak who had been the CEO for years and then was the chairman of the board. He was talking about he had been an environmentalist his entire life. He was the unlikely inheritor of Ford, and he inherited it, and he did his best as a steward of Ford to be able to bring his environmental principles into his leadership. And I was like, my jaw hit the floor, thinking, whoa, like, boy, did I have Ford wrong. And I'm not saying that he was perfect or whatever, but just the authenticity of what he cared about and the position of power and stewardship that he had inherited really made me think twice about the judges that I have in the world. And then you go throughout, you're walking around Burning Man and you find yourself partying with people that are the inheritors of these massive family wealth, that are the power elite, that are the families that are a lot of people see as the bad guys that are running the country, and yet the inheritors of this wealth are having very different sets of values than you would probably project upon the powerful families that run this country and run this world, quote unquote. So like, wow, like what if we stop judging the world as it is, but start realizing, holy smokes, we are all here to inherit. And I use Ford and wealthy families, again, just as examples, as metaphors, really. What's the world that you're going to inherit? And how can you prepare yourself right now for that inheritance, such that you can steward it well when you receive it? And one of the areas of inheritance that I've never heard anybody else talk about is these things called governments. The state of California. Our ancestors invented it. They created it. They put it into action. And they're not going to hold it forever. They're going to pass that on to us to inherit. So whether or not we want to be involved in government, it doesn't matter that someone's going to have to inherit this thing called California. Well, are we ready for that? What are we going to do when that inheritance comes to us? Municipalities, these structures of cities with $1 billion annual budget, with massive administrative capacities. These are our inheritance as well. Life and our ancestors and everything that's led up to this moment has created these systems and structures of organizing people and society and structures and money and laws and policy. And it's not trivial. It's a big deal. And to not think about how we steward these things is to be like the inheritor of $1 billion and to never think twice about what you're going to do with it when that becomes your stewardship. So to me, a renaissance of civic engagement is that we realize in our bones that we are inheriting the entire world. And we're preparing ourselves for receiving that and stepping into that and doing it in the most honorable way possible. Another piece of this renaissance of civic engagement that I think is one of the things that's at the crux of what brings me pain when I look at the world. And that is, for so many people, this disparity between what they experience as relevant or what they put their attention on and what are the most meaningful things to us. What are the things that matter the most? That when we drop into a meditation or visualization on where do we really feel the pain, what really matters, we feel that shared humanity, we feel that suffering, we feel that lost potential, we feel that avoidable suffering, the avoidable death, the avoidable atrocities. I would put these in the categories of extremely meaningful things. And where our attention is, and I'm not saying everyone in this room, but at scale, when we allow ourselves to just be lulled away by the 9 to 5 during the day and the entertainment show, the programming at night, and then rinse and repeat and do that every day, all day. There's this massive chasm between the most meaningful aspects of our society and what we're perceiving as relevant, what we're actually putting our attention towards. And I believe that we can actually bring this together, right? Like Tinkerbell sewing the shadow back onto Peter Pan. We can actually integrate, we can conjoin where our attention is and that which we see as most meaningful. So what we're talking about in the coffee shops, how we're spending our free time is regenerating us and generating the world that we want to experience. And I believe that's possible. I'm actually devoting my entire life to believing that that's possible. And I might be wrong. And I might die not seeing this renaissance of civic engagement. But the 1% chance that it's possible for me is worth going all in for. And every single person who feels that renaissance of civic engagement within themselves and says, yep, boom, what I think about, what I talk about, how I invest my attention, my energy, and what matters the absolute most to me is connected, and that's the life that I'm living. Every person who comes to that increases the probability that this is possible. And we are the inheritors of the media industry, which means we have the ability to tell the stories. We have the ability to entertain our way into meaningfulness through the art, through the film, through the narratives. This is our ability to be able to help to incite a set of values and priorities. We can determine what's cool for the rising generation. Something else that stands up as being a part of this renaissance of civic engagement is a devotion to being extremely good problem solvers and to saying and realizing and being on the path of, as a steward of this place that I call home, in service with my brothers and sisters that I would die for, I want to increase my ability to be able to lead well by understanding the problems and being able to generate really exceptional creative solutions and then be able to implement those solutions. So it's an increase in quality of our thinking, an increased sophistication, our problem solving. And the crux, the center of this is actually keeping us back, that I believe people believe is their civic engagement, but I'm going to kind of posit is actually the antithesis of that civic engagement, is this oversimplistic win-lose dynamic. Right? This is kind of at the center of what I think keeps people from the deepest expression of their civic engagement. We've been entrained by the existing political narratives, playing off of genetic predispositions, to keep doing this in-group, out-group, win-lose, us versus them, right? One of the rule number one of running the empire is get the people fighting each other, because they're a lot easier to manage if they're fighting each other and they're not paying attention, so you can just extract whatever you want to, right? So we look at empires across history, they're literally just arming both sides of an internal battle, because that's cake to manage. So it's no accident that we're living inside of a national narrative warfare. It's an expression of empire that's just playing out itself in our current experience. So when we're inside of this oversimplistic win-lose thinking, then we're warring with opinions, certain that we know who's the good guy and who's the bad guy, who's right and who's wrong, and what the right answer to the issue is. That is an incredibly oversimplistic, immature quality of thinking. It's called the checkerboard. It's black and white. It's binary. It's dualistic. It's this or that. It's opinion warfare. And an opinion means I've stopped learning. An opinion means I don't need any more information. I already know what this is all about. We can't lead from that place. We can't really be engineers of our future and leaders of our world, of our cities, our states, our nation, and our planet from inside of that oversimplistic win-lose, us versus them dynamic. What's possible on the other side is to actually transcend that and move into what we're calling in this network the all-win paradigm. And in an all-win paradigm, there's not good guys and bad guys anymore. We don't have that luxury of being able to gratify our own identity based upon knowing our own righteousness and other people's inferiority. We actually have to do a deeper cut and say, damn, there's a bunch of different perspectives. And every perspective is valid for what it is. And every perspective carries a unique set of insight on that particular topic. And in the all-win paradigm, we're now committed and devoted to being able to integrate those diverse perspectives as the input and the fodder to become better problem solvers, to be able to have a more holistic understanding of something. And this is what we call the jump from the checkerboard to the color wheel. When we get out of win-lose, when we get out of that's the bad guy, I'm not inquiring, I'm not learning when I know who the bad guy is. But when I say, wow, your perspective is so different than mine. What are you possibly experiencing that I'm not experiencing? That when I get your world, I can understand the issue better. That's leadership. And that's the leadership that this world needs right now, because the complexity of the challenges that we're dealing with are more complex by like 1,000 times than this oversimplistic win-lose thinking can possibly be able to handle. And the complexity of the possibilities that are on the table requires a quantum leap in our own computational capacities. And when we move from the checkerboard dualistic win-lose good guy bad guy thinking into an all-win holistic thinking, we start to gain the problem-solving capacities we need to be able to be mature leaders as we inherit our society and our governments and move into the future. And there's really 4 key skills that we're tracking that this renaissance of civic engagement requires of us. It allows us to really be good stewards of our inheritance, maintaining this all-win paradigm. The first is that we know who and what we are as an individual. Know thyself. That we can decipher between that which is attempting to manipulate us and our own sovereign experience, our own sovereign perspective. And that we go through whatever empowerment or healing or growth process necessary to be able to know our truth and to be able to speak that truth and communicate that truth coherently and powerfully. That's step number 1. Step number 2 is once we've really been able to know ourselves and know our perspective on a particular topic, that we're able and we have the security of ourself to be able to take a step back and see the same topic through multiple perspectives, right? If you're tracking some of these developmental models like spiral dynamics or integral theory that are mapping cognitive development, they showcase that the central mechanism that unlocks massive cognitive potential is when you make that leap from only being able to see something from your own perspective to being able to see something from multiple perspectives. And there's a really common sense kind of thing to it. Because if I ask you, what's your perspective of what you're seeing? You're going to tell me you see some faces and a title. And if you ask me what I'm seeing, I'm going to tell you I just see a bunch of words. And so, in a very real sense, this is every problem that exists in our society. And when we allow ourselves to take things from multiple perspectives, then we can actually understand every issue more holistically. And that gets us closer to reality. Gets us out of our stories and our judgments about reality and gets us into better relationship with reality. And so that's that third capacity. Once we've known ourselves, once we've seen a particular issue from multiple perspectives, then we start to consider things holistically, which is kind of like the arch nemesis of an opinion. Because an opinion says, I've stopped asking questions. Holistic consideration says, wow, there's actually an infinite amount of information about this particular topic, and my active leadership is going to know the best 10 questions to ask. And so the leadership of the future isn't judged based upon how quickly they can assert an answer. We actually start selecting for a new trait, which is the quality of our inquiry, which is unlocking new information, which is helping us to understand any particular topic from more perspectives, more holistically, and therefore better informing us on how to be able to make decisions, right? If you were to go into the war room before some, kind of super top secret, intense Navy SEAL operation, the level of reconnaissance and intel that they would have done leading up to that, considering it from every scenario, every possible training for every different possible scenario, right? That quality of holistic consideration is the quality we need to bring into our civics and to transcend this win, lose, us, them, opinion warfare into something more sensational, like inspiring ourselves with what we didn't already know about the topic. And what that third skill unlocks is the possibility of beginning to experiment with all-win solutions. And all-win solutions at a political level. Living inside of a world that's driven by polarizing narrative warfare almost sounds impossible. How could we have an all-win solution? This abortion issue is clearly black and white. This immigration issue, this border issue is clearly black and white. This gun issue is clearly black and white. There's a right answer and a wrong answer. We're just in the inferiority of a win-lose paradigm that is a very low level of complexity for creative thought process. So when we actually say, hey, I care about this guns issue, and not trying to bring my opinion forward, I want to be able to consider this thing holistically. That is the process that begins to reveal a possible all-win solution. That's an octave above where the conversation's at. And I posit that there's actually all-win solutions for every one of our major and minor issues of society and that we see in government and politics. But more important than how we deal with the most polarizing issues is surfacing through holistic consideration all the stuff that we're not talking about on the political stage, right? Really bringing depression and suicide to the table, really bringing domestic violence and trauma to the table, really bringing addiction to the table, really bringing this culture of win-lose domination that is living fully within our society, bringing these topics to the table and beginning to actually holistically consider the issues that are deeper at the roots than the issues that the political entertainment industry wants us to be thinking about. So all of this comes online with this commitment to holistic consideration, and that breeds the possibility as leaders in the future to form all-win solutions. And I would say that one of the deepest cuts of this renaissance of civic engagement is the integration of love and power. So you say that love is the answer. And I've been there for a long time feeling that with you. And the conclusion that I've come to by really, really, really thinking and caring about this world is that the answer resides in bringing love and power together. There's a tremendous amount of love in this world. And there's a tremendous amount of power in this world. And in a lot of ways, the power has been void of love. In a lot of ways, the love has been void of power. Right? When I talk about power, I'm talking about generals and CEOs and presidents and the ability to take an idea and execute it at massive scale, right? Which has created industry. It's also created genocide and a whole lot of things in between. That's power. but void of love. And when I think about love, I think about a mother holding a newborn baby. I think about a gardener tending to their garden. I think about a songwriter writing a song that's intended to inspire, right? And so this is the love that we see in the world, and this is the power that we see in the world. And to me, this renaissance of civic engagement is those with love saying it's power time, and those with power saying it's love time, and believing that those with power can find love, and those with love can find power, and that the leaders of the future, and as we step up, we realize that we are committed to being the holistic embodiment of love and power. And that at scale is basically unprecedented. We haven't seen a society in our modern era where love and power was brought together. And you made that mention around women in leadership. And I'm excited to see that world where men and women are leading side by side in every sector, in every domain. And what I'm excited, one click deeper than that, is that masculine and femininity within each individual, that love and power within each individual steps up and steps in so that we are, in fact, holistic embodiments of love and power, and that we can lead with that, right? Because as our exponential technology is continuing to augment our power, we are actually arriving to a reality where we have the power of gods. With genetic manipulation, with artificial intelligence, with nuclear warfare, we have the power of any god that any myth has ever tried to articulate. Right? We've got it. And that's very scary, and that's very dangerous. But if we can bring that power and then bring this kind of surge of love that seems to be happening, at least in a lot of the communities that I think a lot of people in this room are connected to, and bring that love and power together, then we get the power of gods with the love of gods. And that seems like a required recipe if we're going to do anything like heaven on earth. And the last thing that I'll bring forward in these kind of core tenets of this renaissance of civic engagement is those that are into the things that I just mentioned need to organize, need to get organized with each other, who are interested in that, in those principles, in that belief that we can actually step into a deeper level of really embodied stewardship in our world. And so we have formed a new political party called OneNation, OneNation Party USA. And that is a space for us to cultivate this energy of this renaissance of civic engagement and the practical skills and the direct organization as a network to be able to continue to discover how we as individuals can keep changing ourselves to be more of that, how we can inspire other people to be more of that, and what we can start to do as we step into that together. I love to look at cities and see this massive potential, right? I just see that, holy smokes, cities are awesome. And the idea that we can steward these cities, right? A couple elections, mayor, city council, before you know it, you're calling the shots for how we use $1 billion city, $1 billion budget for an average size city. A city like San Francisco, I don't even know what the budget is. It's massive, massive administrative, massive execution capacities. And a lot of us have these visions of like this new world, and how do we scale up childhood trauma therapy? How do we scale up regenerative agricultural practices? How do we scale up new systems of social coordination? Well, we can use our cities to experiment with how to do that. And so in 2022, our intention is to run a national OneNation mayoral campaign of a new generation of mayors committed to these principles of this Renaissance civic engagement and the all-win paradigm, moving into positions of city stewardship. So we actually begin to use the governmental institutions to start to experiment with how to regenerate humanity and how to regenerate our ecology and how to experiment with new forms of governance that can ultimately set new precedences for how we run cities, states, and nations of the future. So we're imagining the ballots lit up with new OneNation mayors and a national movement, a fervor, a renaissance of civic engagement, if you will, that's saying we're ready for a new generation of mayor that's going to run cities in a new way according to a new set of values and a new vision that I, as a person, as a voter, as a citizen of that city, am fully enthusiastic by, fully inspired by. So in order to achieve that outcome, we have what we call our 2020 All-Win campaign. And this is our launch. This is our launch strategy. It's our launch plan. It's a moment in time to be able to crack the conversation at a national scale, crack it open at a national scale to say, who's interested? Who's ready to be able to transcend the win-lose narrative warfare politics, but not abdicate your participation in politics and find a way to organize and coordinate in a way that is fully aligned with yourself? Who's interested in that? We don't need to convince people. There's already millions of Americans that are begging for that. We just have to put the bat signal out so they can see that a new opportunity, a new possibility exists. So 2020 is a very robust campaign. There's a lot of facets to it, a lot of art, a lot of bringing leaders together, a lot of communicating things from a political stage that have never been communicated before at a political stage, a lot of provocation to be able to flesh out who's ready. And we move in 2022 with these next phases, and with each election cycle thereafter, as a new political party, we build the membership base, we build the voter base, we train a new generation of leaders, we prepare those leaders to be able to inherit these cities, these states, and these nations. And all the while we do that, knowing that massive systemic transformation is on the cusp, right? We're not inheriting the government because it's going to stay the way that it is, but because as it goes through these massive transformations it's inevitably going to go through, that we can steward it from the inside. So we're not just outside of City Hall with our picket sign saying, here's what we want to see different. We've just become City Hall. We've just become the thing, right? I love that scene right at the end of the Matrix when Neo stops running from the agents. And if you're familiar with that scene, he stops running. He stops fighting. He stops avoiding, and he just steps towards the agent. He enters Agent Smith, and he splinters him into light from the inside out. I think that that's the moment in time that's available to us as we overcome our own aversion to politics, as we overcome any of the cynicism that we've had, to be able to move from any type of position of victimization into our full, sovereign, generative creativity to say, I'm ready to inherit these things called governments. I've got a plan, and I am willing to say yes to that responsibility. I think the only way to pull this off is because it has to sound fun. It has to sound like your idea of a good time. That's the fundamental premise at the bottom of this renaissance of civic engagement, is we've made leading our world fun. I do believe that that's possible. And this feels fun to me. And I hope that there's some part of it that could feel fun for you too. And I hope that we can connect to that part that feels fun for you and open that wide open. So it can feel really fun. And when it feels really fun, then we know we've succeeded in creating a new part of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.